If you've ever wondered about the origin story behind BattleBots and robot wars and a lot of the new technology that's happening in the robot space, today we're in a really great location to talk about it. Behind me was the setting of one of the most controversial performance art shows involving robots, or performance art shows full stop, that the city of San Francisco had ever seen. Because this is where Survival Research Laboratories held a performance that was one for the record books. Welcome to the Ground Floor Innovation Channel, where we look at the origin stories of technologies of the past and how they influence everything around us today. Now, robots are pretty ubiquitous, from Boston Dynamics to Tesla, but the kind of robots I'm talking about are quite different. Back in 1978, Mark Pauline started a performance art company called Survival Research Laboratories. And they made a pretty big splash back in the 1980s with shows involving robots that were as big as buildings. And they would battle to the death. So these were destructive, chaotic happenings where basically if you knew, you knew, and you would come out at night and see one of these battles take place, and everyone around was influenced by what was happening. Now, Mark Pauline got his start around the same time that the punk rock and industrial movements were taking place here in San Francisco. So think around 1978 timeframe. And he built up a team of people that would help assist him putting on these performances. Sometimes they would have flamethrowers, sometimes these things would be weaponized. Oftentimes it was just a madhouse scene that was taking place at each of one of these performances. So much so that getting permits for them was just about impossible. Now, robots today have become something of kind of a friendly force, something that we use to be productive, something that we use in our everyday lives to vacuum our floors. But Mark saw them as something that was destructive to society. So his views of robots was much more in line with the Terminator franchise than it was the commercial of robots that we see today. Although it's a fair guess to say that probably the people that worked and supported him have gone on to some of the more commercial aspects that we experience in present day. Behind me in 1989 was the scene of probably one of Survival Research Laboratories' most notorious performances. It was called Illusions of Shameless Abundance, and it features 20 grand pianos being burned at the entrance of the Bay Bridge on-ramp. It had flamethrowers, it had vats of rotting food, and it had what looked like large bombs. You can imagine that the city of San Francisco was not too impressed with this, and they were banned from doing further performances after the bomb squad was called in, and there was damage done to the pillars for the on-ramp to the Bay Bridge. That didn't slow down Survival Research Laboratories, though. They went on to do more than 120 other shows around the world, and you can even book them for private appearances to this day. In 1991, Survival Research Laboratories had a homemade V1 rocket that was so loud it resulted in more than 300 calls to San Francisco's earthquake crisis line. So you can imagine that when Survival Research Laboratories had a happening, whether it was permitted, legal or not, people knew about it all around. Although Survival Research Laboratories isn't as active today as it once was, they've since relocated to the North Bay in Petaluma, Mark is still actively producing robots. And in fact, there's an eBay listing happening right now where you could hire Mark and his team to put on a private robot war performance for you for the low price of just $189,000. I'm pretty sure the permits are on you though. If you like stories like this and you want to hear more about the origin of interesting movements and technologies, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the Ground Floor Innovation Channel, maybe drop a comment if you were at one of the Robot War performances. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us.